It's time to sit down and relax for the good, the bad, and the sequel Q&A with your host, Doug.
Hey there, Doug here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. This week's interview is a good one. I was lucky enough to interview actor Stuart Fratkin. Of course, we talked about next week's sequel, Teen Wolf 2, and his role as Styles, and a lot of the behind the scenes on that. But we talked about a lot of other stuff. He was very open and honest about why he wanted to get into acting. You know, he was funny in school. So he's like, why not? I want to be an actor. He grew up right in the thick of it, you know, in close to Los Angeles. And we talked about a lot of the roles, you know, Golden Girls he was on, The New Adventures of Bean Baxter, which a previous guest, Jerry Wasserman, was on. So that was really cool having that connection. And we just talked about the whole industry as a whole. And Stuart was great. So you're going to love him. And he's pretty funny too. So he has a great sense of humor that I really appreciated. So enjoy actor Stuart Fratkin.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Sure. Let me know if you can hear me okay, because I am walking around my office. I'm going into our conference room to have some privacy.
Oh, cool. No, you sound
great.
Can you
hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Perfect. Excellent. So what's going on?
Well, I hope you're being safe.
Well, yes, we are. We're being as safe as we can. Who knows these days? I'm not sure exactly what precautionary measures constitutes being safe these days.
No, I know. That's true. So cool, man. So yeah, what I like to do with these is find out, you know, how people got started and then touch on some roles that you played over the years. So first of all,
course,
yeah. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in the suburbs of Los Angeles called Calabasas. Calabasas is known these days for two things. Well, primarily it was the place where the Kardashians filmed and recorded their TV shows.
Oh, wow.
I lived somewhere around that area, about 2 miles from their house. And then unfortunately it had, it was the place where Kobe Bryant passed away.
Of course. Yeah. So sad.
Yeah. So that's the other place where the other thing that was, I guess there's, when I grew up, it was much smaller. No one knew what Calabasas was. Never heard of it before. Calabasas, Woodland Hills, the entire part of the San Fernando Valley. So that's where I went to high school. I grew up there, and I moved back, and I live somewhere around there right now.
Oh, look at that. Back where it all started. So when was it that you thought, hey, you know what? I want to take a stab at this whole acting thing.
That's funny the way you put that. I'm going to take a stab at this thing. Who knows? You know, early on, I think you know, I was always just a very outgoing and aggressively funny and class clown in middle school and high school. I did theater. And then when I went to college, there was another guy who I knew who started acting professionally. And we started having a conversation about it. And in those days, we're now talking about the mid-'80s. There were, it was a little, I would say, comparatively, it's much easier than it is today. And then as I sort of grew up in the industry, then the introduction of the additional networks started to explode in the late 80s, early 90s. So it made it a little bit easier. There were a lot of other TV shows that were on, so made it much easier to break in at that point. But yeah, I've always, you know, when I was much younger, had a lot more time on my hands, felt there was something that I could give back, as far as at least in the comedy realm. That's kind of how it all started.
That's awesome. So what was your first step into it? Do you remember like what your first audition was?
Yeah, I do remember, because it was terrible. the guy that I alluded to, who I went to college with, was an actor, and he had seen some decent exposure. He had some nice early success, so he introduced me to an agent, and the agent kind of liked me, and she was like, I'll let's test something out. I'm going to send you out on a pilot. And of course, I didn't know what a pilot was in those days. I didn't know what that meant, but it's the first episode of a series. They call it the pilot. And so I went in. So I got the material for it, and the part called for a young kid who was sort of a slacker, and the definitive trait was he was always in his pajamas. So I thought, I'm going to think outside the box here, and I'm going to get myself a pair of pajamas. Amazing, right? That was so smart, brilliant. So I got the pajamas. I rehearsed in the pajamas, and then on the day of the audition, which was a couple days later, I got cold feet, and I was like, "No, I can't do that. It doesn't look professional." So I went the complete opposite direction. I did a 180, and I wore a sport coat and a tie. So I go to the office, I open the door, and guess what I see?
All pajamas.
Yes, a room full of young actors in pajamas. So I had the audition, and the feedback came back to the agent who I was trying to sign with that I was green, and I needed some seasoning. I needed to go to classes, so I did that. So that's when I sort of, for the next 6 months to a year, took acting classes in addition to improvisation classes, cold reading classes. And
where'd you take improv at?
So I took several years with a guy who at the time was the premier teacher for improvisation. It's not probably the ones you've heard in the past. It wasn't. Eventually, I did study with the Groundlings, but at this time, I studied with a guy named Bill Hudnut, and he had a comedy workshop at the ABC studios, where it was really a sitcom class that was that used improvisation tools.
Oh, nice.
And he had all kinds of guests that came there, casting directors and agents and studio executives. He was very well connected. And that's where I actually met my agent, and who I was with for many, many years. So I studied with him. I also had cold reading classes as well. And then I studied with a gentleman named Gordon Hunt, who is Helen Hunt's father. He's passed away a few years ago. So I did that for many years. I continued to do that even when I started to work.
Oh, wow. Did you ever see those casting directors ever again throughout your career? The ones that you saw when you went in wearing the sport coat?
Oh, yes. Oh my God.
I was going to say.
It's so funny you said that.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I know you open the door and you see all people in pajamas, but I bet you they talked about you for, during lunch when they went out for drinks afterwards. They're like, this guy showed up, man.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So that's so funny you said that, because the casting director's name, her name was Joan Sittenfield. And years later, when I was on a TV show called They Came from Outer Space.
Oh, yeah.
When that show was over, Dean Cameron and myself were negotiating to do another show for Universal. And we had to go meet the executives. And sitting in that room was Joan Sittenfield. So I told her the story. She didn't remember it. Of course, it was very vivid to me, but she did not remember it, but thought it was funny. So yeah.
That's awesome. So from there, you're taking the those classes. And then the first thing that's on your IMDb, I'm sure there's something maybe that it's never 100% right, but it has Girls Just Want to Have Fun and The Facts of Life, all back in 1985.
Yes. So the very first professional job I had was Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Oh, wow.
The film with Sarah Jessica Parker and Jonathan Silverman and Helen Hunt. And I originally read for the part so I was brand new, very green, but I was also, at that time, I was very good at improvisation. So almost every single audition I had, I improvised something. So I originally read for the part that Jonathan Silverman eventually got, but they liked me, and my agent at the time, who was my manager, asked if I could audition for a smaller role, and they were shocked by that because I think they thought that I had much more experience than my resume said. So I read for this small little role, and I eventually booked it, and that's how I got my SAG card.
Wow. Isn't that great? Your first role, it's not like guy in back of room or man number 3. You had a name. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I did. What was it? Sam, I think. Sam. Something like that.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Yeah, so a quick story on that. So in order to get into the unions, you had to be what's called Taft-Hartley, which is, I believe the producers have to find somebody who is in SAG to begin with. And if they can't, they can hire somebody, but they have to have a legitimate reason why they're hiring that person. So it's sort of a catch-22 to get into the union. So on the day I was shooting, they normally clear actors prior to going to the set to make sure they're in the union. So the producers assumed I was in the union. And then when I was done shooting, my manager drives up to the set and says, did you finish? Are you done? And I said, yeah, what's going on? She said, I got a call from the producers. They were very upset because you're not in SAG. And I said, we never said I was in SAG. And she said, I know, but they thought you were, so now they have to put you into SAG. So that's how I got into the union. So a small little backstory to that. The producer of that movie, whose name was Chuck Russell, who produced one of the producers on Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Years later, I read for a movie they did a remake of The Blob.
Oh, yeah.
The old Steve McQueen movie. They remade that, and Chuck was the director. So I went in to read for Chuck, and the first thing he says to me is, oh, look who it is. The guy who lied about being in SAG.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what are you talking about? There was nothing on my resume that ever said I was in SAG. He was really he was joking around, but one of those other little stories that you meet throughout the years.
It's funny. Everything intertwines. Everybody I talk to throughout when we're going through their career, it's always like one person they either met in the beginning, they see again at the end, or throughout the way. It's just funny how, even though it's such a big industry, like how many people are in it, it intertwines no matter what. Yeah,
that's why that's where the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon came in, because it really is a small, somewhat incestuous industry, which is good and it's bad. It's there, for those that want to break in, it's difficult, but when you do break in and you do have some experience, you tend to know throughout the years other people that you've worked with or know people that you've worked with. So that does come in handy, and especially when you're talking about when you're going over these stories years later.
Yeah. So then you're on a bunch of series, the next couple of years, Facts of Life, Silver Spoons, Sledgehammer, My Sister Sam. But one that was really cool, just a photo on your IMDb, was with on Golden Girls, which that show's so iconic. It doesn't stop. Yep. It's four amazing older women that are just so sassy.
Incredible. It
Yeah.
was once again, I was very young, but I wouldn't say I grew up in the industry. I didn't. I started in my early 20s, but
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of television, film actors, and pop culture. So even at the age of what was I when I did the Golden Girls? I was 24 or something, 23, 24. It was amazing to be on the set with people like B. Arthur and Betty White and Rue McClanahan. It was incredible. It was all I did in my downtime was sit in the audience chairs and watch them work, and it was amazing. But here's a quick story about that show. So I'm still very new to the business. I'm still enamored with all of these people. So one of the guest stars on that show was Polly Holliday, who played Flo on Alice.
Yeah.
Right. So she played. I think it was one of the ladies' sisters who was blind. So Polly Holliday, who was, I guess, took the part extremely seriously. We're backstage, and they're introducing the cast. You know, they come out in the beginning and they do a bow, and the audience applauds for them. So the guest stars are introduced at the end of the show. So Polly and I are sitting next to each other, and she is, unbeknownst to me, she's concentrating. And I say to her, I kind of nudge her, and I'm like, "Isn't this exciting? Isn't this fun?" And she goes, "Shh, I'm focusing." And she was dead serious.
Wow.
And incredibly put off by me saying something to her. And I remember thinking at that moment, number one, what a bitch. And number two is, all right, I better cool it. I'm going to file that one away to make sure that, actors have their own they have their own space. They have their own method. And so I better respect that. So that's a little story about backstage of the Golden Girls.
Look at that. And then 87, you're busy too. So from there, you were working a lot. You had 3 movies that came out in 87, Valet Girls, Daddy, and then of course Teen Wolf 2.
Yeah. So at the end of 86, I started to get busy. I had switched agents, and I got a very good agent from that ABC workshop that I did. He came to see people there, and he picked a couple of people, and then I ended up signing with him. So he started to send me out to introduce myself to casting directors that I didn't know. They were called not actual auditions. They're just general meetings. Sit down and you talk and you share stories and you tell a little bit about yourself and so forth. So I started to go out quite a bit. And at the end of 1986, I booked this movie of the week. No, it wasn't a movie of the week. Oh, it might have been. Yeah. I don't think it was called Movie of the Week. It was more like an after-school special, but it was in the evening. It was called Daddy. And it had a very good cast in it. Dermot Mulroney and Patricia Arquette and the late Danny Aiello. And once again, I was enthralled to be with these incredibly talented people. And I played one of Dermot's buddies, myself and another actor, J.J. Cohen. And at the time, Dermot and I had the distinction of sharing the first prophylactic on network television. So I got that. I really got to put that on my resume somewhere in there.
Yes.
That nowhere on network television had a rubber ever been shared between 2 people. Not like intimately, but like, hey, here's a condom for you. So yeah, and then 87 started, and it was a pretty busy year. I was doing a TV series at the time for Fox The inaugural season of the Fox Broadcasting Company, which it was called at the time, then eventually it was Fox, had a bunch of TV shows on it. And I was shooting one of them called The New Adventures of Beans Baxter. And then there were some other shows that were on at the same time. I think Matt Perry was on a show.
Yeah, 21 Jump Street was one, Married with Children. Tracy Ullman had a show, I think, at that
That's right. You're right. And then eventually The Simpsons.
Yeah. So this is pretty funny. So somebody I just interviewed, I just released the interview actually yesterday, but I talked to him a few months back, was the actor who played number 2, Jerry Wasserman.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Out of Canada.
Yep. Well, he's actually a New York guy. And then he went out to Vancouver and he never came back. But no, he was really cool. Right. He had fond memories of that show.
Yeah, good guy, good dude, a lot of fun. That show was a lot of fun. It was the first time I had a chance to work outside of LA on location. It was one of those, oddly enough, it was one of those auditions. I'll never forget this because in those days, there was a very small group of guys that looked similar to each other and went out for the same roles. And I remember the same group of guys saying that Fox had a couple of pilots they were casting, but they weren't going to read for them because they weren't sure where they were going to go because they weren't pilots. They were called presentations. Oh. And a presentation is different from a pilot in that they're only shooting a couple of scenes from the pilot, and then they present those to the network executives, and then they will make their decision. So I remember thinking at the time, I got nothing to lose. This sounds like a great opportunity. So I went in and read for Beans Baxter. And then there wasn't a lot of competition. And I never forget booking it. And then working in Canada with Jerry and Eleanor Donahue and Kurtwood Smith and John Ward and Karen Mistel. And of course, the creator and writer, director, Savage Steve Holland.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, he's good. That guy's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he's been around. Yeah, I thought he was local. I didn't know he was from New York. I didn't have a lot of scenes with him. Most of his scenes were with John. But what I remember of him, he's a nice guy.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so you had that show on, and then so Teen Wolf 2, when that gets presented to you, how does that? I'm sure you saw the first one, right?
Yeah, up to that point, to be honest, Doug, I hadn't seen it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the first one until I got the audition for the second one, and then I watched the first one.
And when you auditioned, you knew it was for the role of Styles?
Yeah, I mean, I had asked. I didn't understand why Jerry Levine wasn't reprising his role as Styles. I asked that question, and at the time, they said he didn't want to do it. So I know that years later, I don't know if that's true or not, but they said he didn't want to do it. So I got the script for it, and I did my usual shtick, added a bunch of stuff to it, and went back several times. Then I read with Jason a couple times. And then we had a meeting at the studio, which was, they're now defunct, they're out of business, called Atlantic Releasing, yeah, on Sunset Boulevard, and eventually I booked it.
That's awesome. Yeah, so while I was looking at that, because I was looking to see if there was anything online, like why Jerry didn't do it. And then while doing that, I found out he grew up like, he's older than me, but he grew up like 10 minutes from where I grew up. So I'm like, oh man, dude.
Where is that? Where do you live?
I'm in Jersey. So I grew up in South Plainfield. Okay. And he's only like 10 minutes away. And I was like, oh man. But yeah, it's interesting. But no, so the movie, It's funny. I rewatched both of the movies before I wanted to chat with you, and it's kind of fascinating because if you think like there's only a few sports out there that one person, and that's the whole point of the story, with Jason Bateman in the role in the second one. And it's like so hard to choose. You couldn't do basketball again because then that would be like the same exact thing. But really, it'd be so hard to have any sport that would work. Not saying boxing didn't work, but what other options really were there?
Well, let me just tell you the script for Teen Wolf 2 was not what you saw.
Wow.
The original script that I read was not what the final cut was. There was a much different movie in there, and I think the studio got cold feet. Now, it still had the boxing element to it,
yeah,
but it was much funnier. There was more gratuitous jokes in there. It was more about, certainly there was the transformation of the character from, not wanting to transform into the wolf and then eventually transforming into the wolf and then having a swelled head and ego and then that whole thing. But they ended up cutting quite a bit out of the final version. In addition to the script was completely different. So,
oh wow,
I don't remember if I said this on the Blu-ray version. They did a 25th anniversary, I think it was. I did that a couple of years ago for the folks and who eventually re-released it.
Oh, that's cool.
They did a retrospective with a couple of cast members, and so I told some stories on that, and I wasn't sure if I said this or not, but it was a very different script, and the script that I originally read was pretty good. I mean, not that the final version wasn't, but it was better. It was funny. It had a little bit more originality to it. It was similar to the camaraderie between the three characters, Styles, Chubby, and Todd, was completely different than what you saw in the final cut. And so it was a little disappointing for me. I improvised quite a bit. It was all cut. It was more fun. It was more loose. It was more original. But I think they got scared and they wanted to deliver a final product that was much similar to the original. And I think they got away from what I think was a very good script.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot got cut because there's a lot of things that happen pretty quick. Like when you're watching it, he like doesn't think he can transform, and then it seems like 5-10 minutes later he's already like in the transformation. And I would have loved like a more. Yeah, so you're saying you shot a lot of scenes that there was more like camaraderie between you, Todd, and Chubbs?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
I think eventually they decided to focus on the relationship between Todd and Este's character.
Yeah.
I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I forget the name.
But yeah, then it kind of turned into a love story, and they must have cut. I don't remember. I remember the final. I remember going to the screening, the premiere, and being surprised at how much was cut. But it would have added a lot. It would have added another dimension to the movie to me.
Yeah.
That was what made the first one as good as it was, it was a good movie. It was funny. The characters are funny, well defined. Michael was very funny, and Jerry was funny, and Matt was funny. It was, it was just a better movie than the second one.
Yeah, I like the coach from the first one. Him not returning was kind of weird, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. He looked like him.
Yeah,
he kind of looked like him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not him.
Yeah, I think the first one was Jay Tarsis, and the second one was Paul Sands. So Jay Tarsis is a very funny guy, completely different personalities.
Yeah.
Totally different personalities. The only two people, if I remember correctly, that came back from the first to the second were Mark Holton, who played Chubby, and then
The uncle. Yeah.
the uncle, yes,
Yeah.
Jim, James Hampton, Jim Hampton. I remember it was another one of those moments where I was like pinch myself because I was a fan of the first Longest Yard.
Oh yeah.
And he was in that. Yeah, he was in the original Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds and Eddie Albert, and he was awesome. And I just remembered thinking to myself, "This is so great. I am just blown away that I'm sitting here with Jim Hampton.
Yeah,
another great guy, good guy.
He seems like that one Hollywood guy that you look at his career. He was pretty much on every show, regular and F Troop, Gunsmoke.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much everything. So one person, I don't know if you had, I think you had scenes with him, but another guy that's got to be, especially since you're such a fan, and it was a show I'm sure you grew up watching, was Addams Family and John Astin.
Yeah.
How cool was that?
It was pretty great. Now he was a different kind of dude.
Oh yeah.
He was he was a different kind of dude. He didn't socialize a lot. He was very much into his character. Nice guy. Years later, a little side story to John. So I didn't really socialize a lot with him. However, I did a TV series years later. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier called They Came from Outer Space.
Yeah.
Dean Cameron. And he played, we had the last two episodes of the shows was a two-parter, and he played a Hugh Hefner type character in the double episode years later. Yeah. So then another one of those moments where I was like, John, hey, long time no see. How are you? But he's a different kind of dude.
That's
and
cool.
Then also I worked with Mark Holton as well. Mark was a guest star on They Came from Outer Space as well on one of our episodes. So I got to see and work with Mark again too.
That's awesome. So isn't it crazy? Like you do a movie, you've done a lot of films, you've done some TV shows. 25 years later, people want to, they're doing like a behind the scenes. So that must have been cool. Obviously catching up with them when you were on that series, but even 25 years later, seeing people that you worked with and like reminiscing about, something that happened 25 years ago. That's pretty cool.
I love that. Yeah, Doug, it's definitely one of those things where I think when you're doing it, you don't think that you're doing anything that people will remember. You're just working. You want to do the best work possible. And then when people recognize it validates the work that you did and the time that you spent to make it as good as you possibly could. When I did the interview for Teen Wolf 2 a couple of years ago, and it was on the Blu-ray edition, I was thrilled to be part of it.
That's cool.
I know that Jason has not been enamored with that on his resume. But I think he eventually warmed up to it. So I've seen him many times on talk shows, and Jimmy Kimmel seems to like to, remind him. That's a better way to remind him about that. And it's very funny to me whenever I see him interviewed. And also, he's so ridiculously talented that it's shocking to me that he wouldn't look back on that fondly. But that's Jason.
Yeah. And like Ozark's obviously such a great show on Netflix. It's funny watching that movie. There's a few times in the movie you see that because he's so funny in just the way he does like those rambles in a way. It's almost like Vince Vaughn-ish, the way they can do that. And he does that a few times in that movie. And I'm like, man, he was able to do that right from the beginning because I know he was on stuff before that, but
yeah, that
was like his first big role. I think.
Yeah, it was. He was on, first it was called Valerie, and then I think she left the show, and then it was called The Hogan Family.
Yeah.
He was also a regular on Silver Spoons too, but I mean, when I worked with him, you could absolutely tell there was something special about him.
Yeah.
He just he exudes confidence, a little arrogance, extremely funny, very good sense of humor, very talented. You just knew that he was going to get another shot at, stardom, or to be a success. And now he's done, exactly what you should be doing with that kind of success. When he got Arrested Development, I mean, that changed the trajectory of his career.
Yeah,
he's incredibly talented. And if you watch some of the other stuff that he's done, he's explored so many other different roles, not just acting, but of course behind the camera as well, directing. He's very talented. There was a show on HBO called The Outsider.
Oh yeah.
That he produced as well, and he directed the first episode. He's also in the first episode. Very different than Ozark, but still something that obviously it's very dark. So there is that part of him that I think that he likes to explore as well. It's just, I don't know, it's great seeing people that you've worked with over the years, that you bonded with, that you had spent time with, that you liked, see them do well. It's really nice to see that.
That's cool. And you know what I think it's really cool about? Obviously, nowadays, everyone has a cell phone. They could take videos, and I'm sure you could have a camera back then. But if you're ever like, hey, you know what? If I ever want to check out the way I looked like in 1987, you pop on Teen Wolf 2, or you can look at a specific year. Like, I talk to some people that are child actors, and I'm like, you can go back and literally watch home movies of yourself growing up. And it's fascinating. So you have this little moment in time that you're that age and you can watch yourself doing stuff.
Yeah. It bums me out a little bit that I didn't go through that time with technology today.
Yeah.
Because I think that it probably, for me personally, I think that it would have, I like and embrace technology. I think I would have been able to use it much more to my advantage. That, a lot of actors do today, using social media.
Yeah, that's true.
Being able to do exactly what you just alluded to, using technology to look back on what is set like, and then, posting things on social media. But yeah, that's funny that you said that, because oftentimes I know when I eventually watched the behind the scenes, the interview from on the Blu-ray version of Teen Wolf 2, I watched that and I was like, holy shit, I look old. Because they go back and forth, right? They show a clip from you from the movie, and then they show a clip of you sitting there, 25 years later. I'm like, oh man.
That's awesome. No, but that's cool. So then from there, you had a bunch of TV series, just like you said, like that improv class that you took at ABC Studios, like doing those workshops, obviously help out with auditions, because again, super busy. Between 88 and 90, it looks like there's about 8 or 9 shows that you were on, or TV movies. And then one thing that was really cool on here, because you worked with Dean Cameron. Now, did you work with him on Ski School first, or they came from outer space?
Yeah, so the story goes that I was given a script for Ski School, and I originally, at that time, my head was swelling quite a bit, and I said I would only play the part of Dave Marshall, that eventually Dean played. Yeah. So I read for that role, and they said they were going to make an offer to Dean. And at the time, Dean was the guy. There was a period of time where literally after he did summer school, he was the dude. And every role that, guys like me went in for, Dean was there and would probably book it, or he'd be offered it. So that happened. And then they were like, we want you to be in this though, Stuart. There's this other part. And there was really nothing to it, but they were like, you can do whatever you want with it. We can sit down and write some additional scenes with you, but we want you to be a part of it. And to be honest, I thought it would be, first of all, I appreciated the fact that they were going to do that they wanted me to be in it, but I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to work with Dean. So eventually I accepted the role, and then met Dean and Pat Laberto at the airport. We were all on the same flight to Canada. And my introduction to Dean Cameron, I had never met him before. And I walk up to him, and he's standing there with a cigarette in his hand. And I go, how's it going? I'm Stuart. And he goes, I'm Dean. Welcome to Ski Stool. So that's Dean Cameron in a nutshell. Welcome to Ski Stool. And then we became very good friends during the show, during the movie. We wrote several of the scenes. So at one point during the movie, they were short on time, and they came to Dean and I, and they could tell that we were getting along very well. We were improvising quite a bit together, and they came to us and asked us to write some scenes. So we did. And we wrote some scenes, and they typed them up, and the next day we shot them, and they're all in the movie. The final cut of Ski School. They're probably one of the ones that, if you see that movie, the scenes that you would remember.
Oh, wow. Do you get writing credits or anything like that?
No.
Oh, okay.
We should have. No, we should have. We got screwed on that movie big time, but it paid dividends. We came back. Dean and I became friends. We spent like most of the summer together hanging out because my wife was working. My wife was in production at the time, so she was on location. So Dean and I spent days and nights playing Mario Brothers.
Nice.
And then a script came. It was the beginning of pilot season. The script came for a show called They Came from Outer Space, and it was about two alien brothers. So I said to Dean, why don't we go in together on this? Why don't we ask April Webster, who was the casting director, if we can go in together? So she thought it was a great idea. So Dean and I rehearsed together. We improvised the crap out of it. We added our own stuff. We went in for the creator of the show. Then we went back for the producers. And one of the producers said at the end of the audition, because we had this thing down and we improvised our own stuff, and at the end of the audition, he said, guys, hated the acting, loved the writing. So we knew what he meant by that. It was a backhanded compliment, meaning that he loved the fact that we improvised as much as we did. And then eventually we got it. And so Dean and I did that show for 6 months. And that's what I alluded to a little bit earlier in the conversation about eventually it was owned by Universal. And then this was to launch another network. Gee, it was the first time I actually thought of. I've been a part of launching a few networks.
Look at you.
This one was called, it eventually blossomed into what is now known as UPN.
Oh, UPN. Okay.
But at the time, the first part of that network, they produced 3 shows, and it was called the Hollywood Premiere Network, and it was going to be shown, not syndicated all throughout the country, just into, I think, 3 syndicated areas: Los Angeles, New York, and I think some weird place like New Mexico. So eventually then it was syndicated, and that's how I worked with Dean. And then eventually we worked together again on another TV show with John Landis called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh, cool.
I guest starred on that show.
That is awesome. Then you were in a lot of cool movies too. I remember Pre-Hysteria as a kid. I remember watching that movie a bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was that at the time was the largest direct-to-home video ever.
Wow.
When it was released, it had that distinction. So that was that was a lot of fun. That was shot in Visalia, which is a small little suburb town about 3 hours from here. And it introduced me to that studio at the time, which is now, I think they're out of business now. That was Charlie Band's company, called Full Moon Productions, and then Moonbeam. So Full Moon produced all these horror movies. Puppet Master, I think.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, that's his company. And then he created another company called Moonbeam, which he produced kid movies, and that was one of them, Prehysteria. And then eventually I did another one playing the same character called Remote, which was a takeoff sort of on Home Alone. Very cute movie too. That was a lot of fun. Well done too.
Oh, that's awesome. So then looking at your IMDb, just like obviously you grow up, so do like the roles. So then you start, then you became, and this is funny, when I talked to Jerry Wasserman, he said, if you look, there's like every role that he is, and he even jokes to himself about it. He plays a lawyer, a cop, and it's funny. It's spot on. You just look at it. He's like, yeah, that's who I play. But,
yeah.
or like an agent, like a secret agent. But yeah, so
right.
So you got to play like in the courtroom and ADA.
Yeah,
you were on Judging Amy. So you were able to, 20 years later, completely different kind of roles, but you were able to adapt.
Yeah, it was it. Listen, there were some lean years in between there. But I was fortunate and I was lucky to work as long as I did. I remember my agent saying, you have to constantly reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
So, people that I see in the industry, in the business, that I used to see on auditions, reinvented themselves very well. People like Dean Devlin and Grant Heslov, who were both young actors. You look at their IMDb page, they were actors. They did roles in movies and TV. And then eventually they reinvented themselves and started to write and then produce whatever they wrote, or they created projects for themselves. And these are guys that I think of that use the industry as somebody who is creative should. They reinvent themselves. And so I, eventually had to, like I said, there were some lean years in there where, I was sort of going through the transition from being, high schooler to college, to no longer being able to play the best friend of the lead, to, having to be a young adult.
Yeah.
Most people didn't see me as a dad yet. But I was able to transition into playing lawyers pretty easily. So a lot of those roles you're looking at were, either district attorneys or lawyers, on Judging Amy and Murder One. I don't think I was a lawyer on Murder One. Those Botchko shows, I was on a lot of those, NYPD Blue, and then they did a pilot called, I think it was actually called, oddly enough, I think it was called NYPD 2020, and it took place in the future.
Oh, wow.
This was a long time ago. This is like 15 years ago. Yeah.
So one thing you mentioned before, you said your wife worked in production. How'd you meet her?
Well, we didn't work. I didn't meet her on any show. I didn't meet her through any showbiz connection. I met her at a dance club that I used to go to every Saturday night, and in Hollywood, that only played Motown music.
Nice.
I used to go there every week, and that's where I met my wife. Who I'm
Look at that, and especially that it's only one type of music, so at least she likes it too. So then you can play it.
That's true, but you know what, Doug? That's a great question. I don't remember, and I'll bet you, because she went there with a friend. And this place was very, Yeah, so I don't know that she went there for the music, man. I went there for the music because all they played were like Motown and
Oh, yeah.
60s music. And so there were a lot of young people there that like the same kind of music. But that's funny you said that, because I don't think I ever asked her if she went there for the music. I just
That's
met
funny.
her there, and then, yeah, that is funny.
It's like you're picking out your wedding song. You're like, honey, let's do something Motown. You know, it's how
Right.
we met. And she's like, I hate that music.
No, I could see that that's not the reason why she went there. I think she went there because her friend was going, and then I just happened to I knew her friend, so she introduced us. So
That's awesome.
That's how that happened.
Stuart, that's been great. A couple questions before I let. Well, one question, one idea that I had. So question wise, if you weren't going into acting, was there anything else that you thought of beforehand?
Oh, man, that is a great question, Doug. So at that time, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, if you think about yourself back then, you've got one thing on your mind. You're focused on one thing only. And there was nothing that was going to get in my way.
That's awesome.
Of pursuing what I wanted to do first and foremost in my life. So the answer to that question is no.
Oh, that's cool.
At that time, there's a whole other story to, it wasn't that good in school. I wasn't that interested in school. I was really only interested in acting. So no, the answer to that question is no. There was nothing that was going to stop me at the time from doing what I wanted to do. And that's why I said as well that I was lucky, I was blessed, I was fortunate to work as much as I did, and I was able to save money and buy a house and provide for my family until I sort of, transitioned. Not transitioned, like what you're thinking, but transitioned out of showbiz a little bit.
You still got that humor. So do you still audition at all nowadays?
Yeah, so I do. I have probably, if you looked on my IMDb page, you'll see a new picture there, a new headshot.
Yeah.
So I'm much older and hopefully a little wiser. And thankfully, I'm in a position where I can go audition and not have the pressure of having to use that money to pay for my family, use that. I don't need to make a living off of it anymore at this point. So thankfully, I've been kind of dipping my toe in the water a little bit more. My kids are out of school and are on their own for the most part. So I've been auditioning for commercials, and then eventually I'll start auditioning for theatrical roles as well.
Awesome. That's cool. And now here's an idea that I was thinking of, and it's pretty cool that you kind of brought it up earlier. I was saying to my wife, I'm like, it'd be a really cool thing, especially with everything that's going on right now. Nobody knows how long it's going to last. There's probably, I don't know how many thousands of pilots that never saw the public eye. And that'd be really cool if this summer or even in the fall, because I don't know if they'll have time to, film the shows that are on now and have another season ready in time. I think that'd be so cool to have all these old pilots out there and people can check them out.
So that's funny that you said that, Doug, because I think that I've heard that. So there's a book that exists that has a list of all of the unaired pilots that exist.
Oh, awesome. I looked that up.
Because I think the reason why I thought about that is there was, I don't know. Let me see. I did a pilot. It was canceled. But then I did this NYPD. I think it was NYPD 2020. I could have sworn that's what it was called, but I don't think it ever aired. And it made me think if it was, I wondered if it was listed on this, in this book. But that is a great idea but I don't know if it's been done already. Have you looked to see if they've done something like that?
I don't remember. I watch a lot of TV, and I'm sure I would remember if they would have like thrown things out there. But I'm gonna look up that book because that'd be pretty cool to check that out. Now I interview and I'm helping this actor, Larry Hankin. I don't know if you heard of him before.
Oh, sure, of course.
Yeah. So I talk to him every Saturday for like an hour and a half, and I'm helping him like either do a book or he's going to do a stage play. We connected because I interviewed him, and then he's like, "Hey, I want to do." So we basically talk about all the stuff he was in. So he was telling me all these pilots he was in, and he was in one with Jeff Garland, and he goes, "Yeah, it never made it to air." So I was thinking about that because I get ready to talk to him tomorrow, and I'm like, "Man, he would probably love that." I think that'd be so cool to see all these. Because there's probably so many of them with people that might be big now or were big at one point. But I don't know if they would ever do it. Because what if people liked it? What are they going to do? Like I don't know. Just something.
Well, it would be like a one-time only. But that's a great idea. That's to take those unaired pilots and to air them as a special. Or, you have also the internet. You could create a website for that as well, or somebody would buy those pilots. The only thing is you'd have to deal with all of the red tape for those, who owns them, and would you have to pay residuals on them? And I mean, Larry probably knows a lot about that too. Is Larry the guy who was on Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was also the guy on Friends too, right?
Yeah, Mr. Heckles on Friends. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Talented guy.
Yeah.
He's character actor. He's great on Breaking Bad. He was just in the reboot, right?
The movie, the Netflix movie, yeah.
Yeah, he was really good in that.
He has a big improviser background too.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Well, tell him he's got a fan. I like him.
Oh, cool, man. I will. Hey, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure, Doug. Thanks for reaching out, and you take care, okay?
Man, wasn't Stuart awesome? He was really cool. We communicate back and forth every so often on Instagram, and it was really cool. Following up on that question about his wife and she liked Motown, and he confirmed, yes, she likes Motown, but so that was good to know. But Stuart was great. I love that he had that connection with Dean Cameron when they first met on ski school, and then they wrote some scenes together. Because growing up, I love they came from outer space. So that was really cool hearing about that. So your homework is to watch Teen Wolf 2. You can find it. It's on Amazon Prime. It's different than I remembered. Me and Jamie had a lot of fun discussing it. And that's all I'm going to say. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media @SequelsOnly. And check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.